Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Most of us have a tricky corner within our garden. But this week, Carol is helping a gardener whose plants are more exposed to the elements than most.
As with any difficult environment, it's a great idea to get out and see exactly how nature copes with similar sort of places.
The weekend is a great opportunity for gardening, but it's also a good time to visit some gardens as well. We take a peek around the gardens of Feckenham in Worcestershire on its open weekend. And I'll be planting cauliflowers in my veg garden, as well as pots that will give me colour right through into autumn. Now this is a turning point of the year really, because once we reach June, I reckon that you can risk the weather, you can gamble with it, because although I have known frosts in June, they're pretty unlikely, which of course is tempting fate in a big way. But I think that now's the time when you can take plants that have been protected for months and put them out in the garden. Now, I'm talking about tender things like cannas, and I've got dahlias in here. As you can see, we've got masses of plants, nearly all of them propagated here over the last 4 or 5 months. Right. Now I've got some lovely new pots here for the dual garden. They're very simple, but they're quite big, and therefore the planting needs to be big to go with it. And what I want to do today is to start planting them up. And I think the thing with a big container, it doesn't matter if it's terracotta, if it's an old sink, if it's a bucket with a few holes in it, is that it can be a really dramatic centerpiece. Now the first thing you do with a pot is you've got to think about drainage. Broken terracotta pots, the ideal thing. But anything will do. Stones, broken bricks, polystyrene chips. They work perfectly well, and actually that enables you to move a pot around more easily so it's not so heavy. But if it's anywhere where the wind is going to blow it, you want a nice solid heavy base. So I'm going to put the crocks in the bottom. Make sure that's sitting steady on the bricks. And by the way, I've raised it up simply to get it to the same height as the hedge rather than because it needs it. It needs to be off the ground, but it could just be a millimetre or two, as long as the water can drain away. Now, a really big container, whether it's a terracotta pot or an old tin bath, it doesn't matter what it is going to be an important feature in your garden. And you want it to last right through into autumn. So it's really important that the compost you put in sustains it. I use a mixture that provides good drainage and nutrition as well as being moisture retentive. It's made up of 1/3 bought peat-free potting compost, 1/3 homemade compost, and the final third an equal mixture of leaf mould and grit. And if you don't have these ingredients, you can of course use straight potting compost, but be prepared to feed your pot after about 4 weeks. So the centrepiece is going to be a canna. Now this is canna Wyoming. It's got these dark, dark leaves and will have an orange flower. Now, cannas like the richest possible conditions you can give them. Lots of heat, lots of feed, lots of water. And around that, I'm also going to add dahlias. I've got 2 types here. I've got Arabian Night and Bishop of Llandaff. Arabian Night's got this rich, intense red, and Bishop of Llandaff famously with the yellow centre. So you see, I'm doing it in the round because it is going to be looked at from every direction. Now that's got the big parts. I've got the big central piece. And by the way, this canna can grow right up here. So a big dramatic plant, and the dahlia is growing perhaps 2-3 times as big. Now I've got some chocolate cosmos to go through this. This is Cosmos atrosanguineus, which of course has the most fabulously chocolatey scent. And that will go in there. Now I'm going to add a little bit of soil around that and then top it up with my last ingredient. What I'm going to use is straight compost on the top, because that will work in easier. My mixture is rather sticky. It's quite like a rich fruit cake. I've got a tray of petunias here. I want to keep it vibrant. I don't want to be too solemn, but it is important that when you're planting any container is to choose a colour theme and stick to it. If you have lots of different colours going on, you end up with a mishmash. But I think these will help. And this, by the way, is Saffinia, Petunia burgundy. And you go there, my dear. Don't fill the soil up too close to the top. You want to have room to water. A good 2 inches on a pot this big. Goodness beneath it, sunshine above it, surrounded by glorious plants. It's going to be good. Now, we all love visiting gardens. In fact, 15 million of us go and visit gardens every year. And we went along to the village of Feckenham in Worcestershire, where over a couple of days, over 30 gardens opened up to the public.
I'm Catherine Fisher and I organise the Feckenham Flower and Garden Festival. I took it on 9 years ago and it is a huge event to organise, but I do enjoy it. Feckenham is a charming village. There's a variety of different buildings. The village pub, the village green, the village shop, 2 churches, the cricket club. Pretty much everything is covered. This is a very pretty front garden. The couple who live here spend a lot of time in their garden and they're great supporters of the festival. And this was the butcher's, and then this was the farmhouse, and this was the slaughterhouse, which is now converted into a home. My mum used to live there. So this is the Old Black Boy, which is probably one of the highlights of the festival. It's a stunning garden with this lovely courtyard and a beautiful, informally planted country garden at the rear. Oh, Betty, nice to see you. How's the garden?
This is what I call the camel because of the way he looks. It was originally an old apple tree, which was dead, with a rose growing up it, and it was a shame to lose the rose, so we felled the apple tree and managed to keep the rose.
They're an amazing group of people, these garden owners. They're so enthusiastic.
So this is my living room, and I've put a temporary corridor in, borrowing screens from the village hall. I've had to protect my wooden floor, because there could be between 1,000 and 2,000 people walking through my house and my garden. This part of the garden gets no direct sunlight at all for 6 months of the year. So it's a question of finding anything that will grow, and then I just let it go rampant. I've never liked yellow-leaved plants. But in a shady garden, they really make a difference. It just brings you a bit of light and sparkle where there wasn't any.
We usually rent properties because we really can't afford to buy where we'd like to live. But what we do is, every time we need to move on, we take part of our herbaceous plants with us by dividing them and leave a garden behind, and then use the plants that we've divided to make a new garden wherever we decide to live next.
It's 12:10 and people have started arriving. In fact, some people arrived at 11:30 when we were still setting up. So it's slowly becoming quite busy here on the square. The gardens here are so special because they're all so different. I think the people coming to see them appreciate that. And I think it's the backdrop and the age of the property and the gardens that go with them, which I think is the really special thing.
This wild garden, there's very cultivated areas, there's lots of people who've got their little allotment sections, you know, something for everybody.
This is my favourite way into the garden. It's a dear little cloister. Don't know when it was built. but it's got very pretty shapes. And then we go in. I've always thought that circles are magical things. The circles are everywhere in this garden. I've tried to make the U's circular. I've made the trees as circular as I can. We put the circle into this paving, the pond, and then I suddenly had the idea that it would be fun to put circles into the lawn.
It's like crop circles almost. It's wonderful.
37 gardens, but we're doing well, so I think we might actually cover them all. And an ice cream in the middle somewhere.
You see people growing things, you thought, I could do that, and that's what I like about it.
There is a particularly lovely atmosphere around for the Flower and Garden Festival. Everyone pulls together to make it a successful event. It's been fantastic.
I like that kind of garden visiting. The expectations may be a little lower than visiting a grand garden, but the rewards are just as high. And it's a communal experience. You're dipping in and out of people's lives as well as their gardens, and you always learn something to take home. These are peonies. Now, peonies are one of those plants that immediately make me feel nostalgic for a sort of Edwardian age, somewhere between a rose and a water lily. Fantastic plants, not necessarily terribly fashionable, but they improve any garden. And there are two types of peony, tree peonies and herbaceous peonies. I've got both here. The tree peony, which has a woody structure with stays throughout its lifetime and can grow really quite big, and herbaceous peonies, which, like all herbaceous plants, die back every winter and then grow their foliage and new flowers every spring. Now I'm going to plant the tree peony first. Now I've chosen this corner to plant the tree peony for two reasons. One, because it's slightly shaded, and it's a tall plant. It'll grow to about 7 foot tall, so the white flowers will shine out of the shade. And two, because it's sheltered from winds. And one of the important things about tree peonies, which are fundamentally tough shrubs, growing on mountainsides with fairly poor soil, is that they can be damaged by winds. Now, these are tough plants, but there is one key thing to remember when you're planting a tree peony, and that is to plant it deep, because you don't just plant it to the pot level, but I'm going to sink it another 2, 3, or even 4 inches up the stem. Now, I'm not adding anything to this, but if you've got very heavy soil, it's probably not a bad idea to add some grit to improve drainage, or if you've got exceptionally light soil, a little bit of compost added in just to improve moisture retention. Right, I'll give that a good soak and then just mulch it to keep it weed-free and keep the moisture in, and that's it. The only thing I will do is deadhead it once the flower is finished. If you deadhead tree peonies, they grow much stronger and you'll get better flowers next year. Now, I've given the tree peony the protection it needs, but the herbaceous peonies can take a much more exposed site. In fact, they'll thrive in full sunlight. Which we'll do here. I'm going to put one either side. Now, this is a white peony called Duchesse de Nemours. Fantastic double white flowers with really good fragrance. So I'm going to pop it in here. Rich soil, good drainage, lots of sun, and it should thrive. Peonies respond to good soil. So if your soil is anything less than pretty much ideal, add some compost. Now, having said all that, I'm not going to because I don't need to. They'll be fine in there. But there is one crucial difference with herbaceous peonies to tree peonies, and that is the planting depth. You should not plant herbaceous peonies too deep. Now, they need to be planted shallow or even proud of the soil for two reasons. They're both to do with weather. They need sunshine to encourage them to grow, but they also need cold in winter, and that will trigger growth as they warm up. And if you bury them too deep, that insulates them from the cold. So expose them to the elements, and as long as they get sunshine, they'll do really well. Now, the one thing about peonies that one often hears is that they fail to flower. And the most common cause of that is because they've been moved. Even as recently as 3 or 4 years, they really don't like being moved at all. So when you're choosing a position for a peony, think about it. Plan it, put it in the ground and leave it alone. Other than that, they're really very easy plants to grow. Now, there's always problems in the garden, but luckily, Carol is there to sort them out. And this week, she's gone to the seaside.
Our coastline is one of our greatest natural treasures. For plants, being so exposed to high winds and salt air can also make it a very inhospitable place. So when we received a letter from a viewer whose garden was finding life on the edge quite a struggle, we went along to see exactly what the problem was.
I'm David Shaw. I'm the owner of Beltwood Lighthouse here at Beachy Head. I bought it in 2008 and renovated and restored it. We've got a real problem here. We would like to plant some nice plants and flowers that will survive. They're fairly extreme conditions up here. The wind is fairly blustery today, but this is nothing compared with what it can be like. The salt air doesn't help. So what I would really appreciate is some help and advice in finding plants to get in the planters so that we can have some plants that look attractive, but the main thing is will survive, which we've not managed to do so far.
Well, David, those are what you call extreme conditions. But as with any difficult environment, it's a great idea to get out and see exactly how nature copes with similar sort of places. And here on this shingle beach, there are all manner of plants that don't just survive, but absolutely thrive. And here's a plant that's truly in its element. This is Cranby maritima, otherwise known as sea kale. And it's got these glorious, tough, leathery kind of leaves. It just loves it here. And I think a plant like this would really thrive in Dave's sort of situation. And there are other plants too, like bittersweet, a solanum. It's a nightshade. And it survives here by being very low, almost prostrate, and popping its head up here and there through the pebbles. To give David some inspiration, I'm visiting a garden in Selsey, West Sussex, that's as close to the sea as you can get. Yet its owner, Liz Shackleton, has learnt how to live in harmony with all that nature throws at her. So is this what you call a relatively calm day?
This is an extremely calm day. Yeah, we get storms here, winds 120 miles an hour, and the sea breaking against the sea wall and just spraying over the house.
Liz moved in here just 6 years ago, when the garden was just a lawn of plantain and thrift.
When I came from Suffolk, and it was very different. Failures were expensive and many, and heartbreaking.
Yeah. So you learn from them quite quickly, don't you?
You learn quite quickly, and you learn how to deal with the wind. The wind is the killer.
Liz has spent the last few years carefully observing what effect the wind, sun and sea here in Selsey have on her garden. It just proves that with a bit of patience, persistence and a lot of luck, you can grow a garden almost anywhere. Your Rosa rugosa seems to survive happily.
After the first year, it seems to get its roots in and starts to grow and flower.
It's a seaside rose. It comes from seashore in Japan, and so
Well,
it's perfect,
the delight
really.
here. The perfume, the flowers, the hips, the foliage.
What more could you want?
What more could you want, indeed?
I love this sea
And
campion.
that's my favourite. I just think it is so beautifully marked.
Very glaucous, quite
Yeah,
thick leaves.
definitely.
And I bet these flowers just manage whatever the weather,
They
don't
do.
they? Yeah.
That's why they're there.
And this erigeron?
Oh, wonderful. Even in the winter, you get this sort of moulded shape.
Yeah. I love the way this helichrysum just makes these beautiful big mounds.
They're fantastic and real stalwarts. Yeah, they keep going through everything.
And those marigolds are so vivid, aren't they?
They're great. You know, very ordinary plant, but they work so well here in the oranges and the yellows, which go fantastically with the greys and blues.
Yeah.
And one packet of seed goes a long way. As they flower and then die off, all the seed goes into the shingle, which is my seed bed. As the garden has matured, then you're getting smaller areas of microclimate.
Yeah.
And more shelter because the plants are more established. You cannot plant a garden like this all at once. You have to wait for it to evolve.
Well, David, I'm sure you'll agree that Liz's garden is just packed with ideas and inspiration that'll help both you and anybody else who has to contend with the same sort of harsh conditions in coastal gardens all around the UK.
I cleared the last of the leeks the other day, which has left room, and that's really good because it means that I can get some brassicas out. Now, we've got all kinds of brassicas growing. Cauliflowers, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, various types of cabbage, and they will all grow well in these two plots, following on from the alliums, the onions, the leeks, garlic, and then the spuds when I lift those round about July, August time. Brassicas are hungry plants, so if you've got any, add a layer of compost and work it into the soil. Right, that's the grown-up bit. This is where all assembled children present should come and give a hand. Of course, this technique has been refined over the years. Now, there is method behind this because what I'm doing is firming the soil so that the roots will have a really firm anchor in the ground. And all brassicas suffer from root rot if they move around, and particularly cauliflowers, which I'm putting in here. And if they are too loose, you'll get small cauliflower heads. So good firm ground is going to help in every possible way. Now, planting brassica will inevitably involve some implement because you shouldn't be able to use your fingers. And it is important to give them plenty of space. I think 2 foot apart is the minimum distance. These are purple cauliflower, violet queen, so look good as well as tasting really good. In there and then really firm him down. I can feel rain in the air. I think it's going to be a downpour soon. But I want to net this before anything happens. I never used to have to net brassicas, but we do have pigeon problems, and a net will keep them off. And also, if the net's fine enough, it will keep off cabbage white butterflies and stop them laying their eggs, which in turn will stop the caterpillars hatching out and tearing a crop to shreds. So a net is a good thing, and I can see the rain now. Now you need to keep it high enough to make sure pigeons won't land on it and bend it down, and tight enough to make sure that songbirds don't land on it and get caught in the netting, and secure enough, particularly along the edges, to stop the butterflies getting in any nook and cranny. So I'm going to have to go around and fix it all the way around the bottom. That's as rain as hail. I'll finish that. I think even the pigeons and the butterflies will take shelter in this. Okay, I'm off. Now that may look like a pretty poor showing of asparagus, but believe you me, it's a heck of a sight better than it was a few weeks ago. I planted it last year, and I tried a new technique of just direct planting rather than putting them in a trench, which is the conventional way, and they came up fine. And then this spring, absolutely nothing. Not a tiny little showing well into April. And I was beginning to think I'd lost the entire crop. And then I heard that everybody was having asparagus problems, that it was at least 10 days behind, and a lot of people seeing no growth at all. And I have to say, I was delighted that it wasn't just me. It's been a funny year for asparagus, and I let it grow, let it get nice and strong, and then next year I'll begin the harvesting routine. So nothing to do except for keep it weeded. However, here are some things that you can be doing this weekend. Now the nights are getting warmer, it's a good time to plant out tomatoes, either in an unheated greenhouse or in a very warm, sheltered spot outside. Either way, plant tomatoes as deep as the first set of leaves. This will hold them steady and increase the root growth and therefore the nutrient uptake for the plant. Either have a strong support system in place or leave room to put one in before the plants get too big. Sawfly can strip red currants, white currants and gooseberries of all their leaves at this time of year. And the best way to deter them is to keep the centre of the plants clean of all new shoots. This stops the flies laying their eggs and the grubs hatching out and munching their way through the plants. Any climbing roses will have put on a lot of new growth, and this should be tied in. Young plants need a framework established, and even mature plants should have new growth fixed in place while it's pliant and easy to handle, and also before it breaks in any high wind. Well, that's it for this week. And I have one last piece of advice. If you do nothing else this weekend in your garden, make sure you give yourself time just to stop and enjoy it for a minute or two. See you next week. Bye-bye.